In fact, I think AON's has used the cloud computing concept really well, and that is in a traditional environment where you have, like you have common hardware that could host, or like you could have a server that do sort of multiple functions, and it's quite hard to work out. In fact, it's quite hard to work out how much is a company actually spending on what, because everything is kind of what there's one data usually there's one data center or one server room, and it's got a few servers, a few rack, and then each rack does a few things. It's actually not easy to work out how much is a company actually spending on what IT services. Whereas once you go to cloud computing, it's very, very clear. In fact, one thing I personally really like about it, and from a corporate perspective, you can clearly work out, for example, you're spending that much for messaging. Because, for example, to pay for the messaging service is that amount of US dollars per user per month. To pay for instant messaging is that amount of dollar per user per month. And to pay for that much storage is that much per user per month. Whereas in a self-hosting environment, you usually buy a lot of storage, and then you work out depreciation, you sign maintenance. It's actually not easy to work out. I think the concept is applied very well for AON. It's easy for us to work out how much we're actually spending on each IT services. In fact, as we speak, right, we've definitely done messaging. We've done messaging, instant messaging, live meeting, as in having web meetings. Our next stage, in fact, is part of the project, is to promote, is to allow sort of better document sharing, and I mean not just sharing documents, just viewing. It goes back to collaboration. We talk about I think cloud computing is a great way to allow companies or offices within a company to collaborate. That you can actually have one person in Hong Kong or maybe another colleague on a different country. You can together edit a document together. You can work on a presentation together. You work on a common report together. And I've seen demo where you're on an inter-messaging session and you work on a document. Then you say, oh, I finished now. The other person change it. Imagine that if you without that platform, without that solution, you edit a document, you email to the other person, then they detach the document onto the desktop, they edit and they send it back. Whereas now you can actually live edit a document together. So it's definitely, I would think that's definitely very good for collaboration. So we're looking at sharing documents in terms of sharing the viewing, sharing also common repository of documents that people can work on together, can look at together, and can use together. The way AON handle it, I guess from what I know is, first of all, you have to understand what your security concerns are, and because we do have a kind of risk management group globally that kind of look at all the things that AON needs to address. And in fact, interestingly for AON, that group is actually separate from IT, which I think is actually separate from IT in terms of they're not part of IT, because it's almost hard for IT people to look at what IT people need to do. So I think AON's kind of done it the right way. They have a group which is slightly different. They're not part of IT, but they look at all the risk management concern that AON has to address. So they kind of give advice to the IT people, the CTO and their group. Okay, these are the concerns you have to look at. And then you make sure you pick a vendor, because because we're now outsourcing all the IT services, you make sure the vendor have either services, facilities, or software that address all those concerns. So in fact, if I was going to look at, I think it can be done better now than before, because we have a common platform, and once you apply those security measures, it applies to everybody on the same platform. Whereas in the old days, you can imagine the risk management group has to go to every different country to make sure that, okay, are their servers got patches? Have they got the firewall rules? Every country have their own environment. It's harder for them to enforce that. Whereas now is much. A lot of people. Interesting. I mentioned. I have sort of said, users sort of gains change. They're sort of a little worried about what change means to them. Even IT professionals often wonder, is that change going to remove my job? Say, I would think a couple of things. I think you do, as a professional, you have to have an open mind. That I think as an IT professional, we're here to provide services to the organization, to the company. So you have to have an open mind first to look at a solution that's really right for the company in their direction, rather than whether it's good for your own career. I know I might be sort of being a little high sounding, but you have to as a professional. Even though that technological change might mean you have a smaller role, if you're a professional, you should go for it. You should go for it because if that's the right thing for the company, then you go for it. And then you need to transform yourself. And one of the advice I've actually given to a lot of people, and that is right, IT these days, you have a very instrumental role in changing a company. So an IT technology can actually transform a company. But before you can transform how a company functions, how they operate, you have to be willing to transform yourself. And I've actually seen a lot of IT professionals, they're not willing to go through the transformation themselves. And because of that, I don't think they're in the position to actually bring necessary transformation to the company. So I would say have an open mind. If you're really good at what you do right, your role might change. But then, we're all meant to change as the world changes.